I was just your average guy with a steady job, a comfortable apartment in Chicago, and what I thought was the perfect fiancé. Allison and I had been together for 3 years, happily planning our wedding for next summer. Everything seemed perfect, until it was not. Something felt off in the way she started guarding her phone, canceling our date nights, and coming home later than usual. Then, I saw a message that changed everything. A single notification that revealed the woman I loved had been living a double life, one that included her high school sweetheart and a sinister plan. Before I dive into how my perfect life fell apart, I would love to know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how I rebuilt myself after my fiancé, family, and future were stolen in a single week. I met Allison at my college buddy Frank's 30th birthday party. She walked in wearing a blue sundress, and I swear time slowed down. Her auburn hair caught the evening light through the windows, and her laugh carried across the room like music. When Frank introduced us, we clicked immediately. We talked until 4 in the morning about everything from our shared love of hiking to our dreams of starting our own businesses someday. By the end of that night, I knew she was special. We exchanged numbers, and I called her the very next day. Our first date was at this little Italian place downtown, where the owner still makes homemade pasta daily. She told me about her job as a marketing executive, and I shared stories about my work as a financial consultant. The hours flew by, and before I knew it, we had plans for 3 more dates that week. For the first year, we existed in that perfect honeymoon phase. Weekends spent exploring state parks, cooking elaborate meals together in my tiny kitchen, and planning adventures for the future. When my lease ended, moving in together felt like the most natural step in the world. We found a 2-bedroom apartment with a view of Lake Michigan that we both fell in love with. I can still remember carrying her across the threshold that first day, both of us laughing as I almost dropped her when my foot caught on the welcome mat. After 2 years together, I knew she was the one. I spent 3 months searching for the perfect ring, a vintage sapphire, surrounded by tiny diamonds that reminded me of her eyes. I planned the proposal down to the minute, taking her to Warren Dunes State Park at sunset. We climbed to the top of the tallest dune, and as the sun painted the sky in oranges and pinks over Lake Michigan, I got down on one knee and asked her to be my wife. She cried. I cried. And when she said yes, it felt like everything in my life had led me to that perfect moment. We set the date for June 15th at my family's estate in Michigan. My parents adored Allison. My mom would call her the daughter she never had. And my dad, a man of few words and fewer expressions of emotion, would light up whenever she was around. We spent countless weekends at their place, planning the wedding, with Allison and my mom becoming inseparable as they discussed flowers, caterers, and bridesmaid dresses. Looking back now, I should have noticed when things started to change. About 8 months before the wedding, Allison began acting differently. Small things at first. She started keeping her phone face down all the time and would take calls in another room. Her password, which had always been my birthday, suddenly changed. When I asked about it casually, she claimed she needed more security for work emails. Then came the work emergencies that would pull her away at odd hours. Dinner reservations canceled 20 minutes before we were supposed to leave. Weekend trips postponed because of crucial client meetings. Once I woke up at 3 in the morning to find her side of the bed empty. When I texted to check if everything was okay, she said she had gone to get some air because she could not sleep. She came home an hour later, smelling faintly of cologne that was not mine. I found a brown leather jacket in our closet that I had never seen before. When I asked about it, she claimed it belonged to her coworker Jesse, who had left it at our house during a work gathering. But we had not hosted any work functions in months. Whenever I tried to talk about these inconsistencies, Allison would turn it around on me. She said I was being paranoid, that wedding planning was stressing me out, that I should trust her more. And I wanted to believe her. I wanted so badly to believe that the woman I loved The woman who wore my ring and slept beside me every night would never lie to me. The truth came crashing down on a Tuesday afternoon. Allison had forgotten her phone at home, and when a message notification lit up the screen, I glanced over instinctively. The preview showed, "Jake, miss you already. Last night was amazing. Cannot wait to see you again tomorrow while he's at." My stomach dropped. I had never heard her mention anyone named Jake before. I knew I should not invade her privacy. But the suspicion that had been building for months finally overwhelmed my better judgment. I picked up her phone. It was locked, but I tried an old password she used to use her mother's birthday. The screen unlocked. The messages from Jake went back 6 months. Hundreds of them filled with intimate details that made me physically sick. Photos I can never unsee. Plans for hotel meetups. Inside jokes about deceiving me. And the most gut-wrenching discovery, Jake was not some new guy in her life. He was her high school boyfriend, her first love whom she had reconnected with at a reunion last year. I sat there for hours reading through their conversations, each message another knife in my chest. I learned that Jake lived just 30 minutes away, that they had been meeting 2 or 3 times a week while I was at work, that she had even taken days off to spend with him. There were messages about how they would laugh about me, about how I was too trusting and oblivious. When Allison came home that evening, I was waiting. The phone sat on the coffee table between us. The moment she saw it, she knew. Her face went through a series of emotions: shock, fear, anger, and finally a calculated calm that chilled me more than any outburst would have. "How dare you go through my private messages?" she said, as if I was the one who had done something wrong. "Who is Jake?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. She tried denial first. "A work colleague. We have been collaborating on a project." "Stop lying," I said. "I read everything. Allison. Everything." That was when her strategy shifted. She admitted to the affair but tried to minimize it. It was just physical, Boyd. It did not mean anything. "I love you." I asked how long it had been going on. When she said 6 months, I felt like I had been punched. 6 months is not a mistake, Allison. 6 months is a choice you made. Every single day. Then came the bomb that destroyed whatever remained of my world. She sat down suddenly, looking vulnerable, and said, "There is something else you need to know. I am pregnant." At first, a tiny hopeful part of me thought, maybe, just maybe, the baby was mine. But that hope died quickly. "It is Jake's," she confirmed. "I am about 2 months along. 2 months. I did the math in my head. We had not been intimate in nearly 3 months due to her constant excuses of being tired or not feeling well. Now I understood why. "We can still make this work," she said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away as if her touch would burn me. "You can raise the baby as your own. No one needs to know." That was when I realized just how little she respected me. How little our relationship had meant to her. She was not just asking me to forgive her betrayal. She was asking me to participate in a lie for the rest of my life. "I want you out of this apartment by tomorrow," I said. Her eyes hardened then. "You are making a mistake, Boyd. This baby needs a father. Jake is not ready for that responsibility." "That is not my problem," I replied. "You and Jake created this situation. You two figure it out." As Allison packed some essentials for the night, promising to return for the rest of her things, I noticed her diary on the nightstand. I had never read it before, respecting her privacy, even though she had kept it in plain sight throughout our relationship. But now, with everything shattered between us, I picked it up and began to read. What I found was worse than the affair itself. There, in her neat handwriting, was a calculated plan. She had been having unprotected sex with Jake, deliberately hoping to get pregnant. Once she had confirmed the pregnancy, she still planned to marry me, pretending the baby was mine. After a year or two, she would divorce me and claim substantial child support and alimony. She had even calculated how much money she could expect to get from me over 18 years. There were messages between her and Jake discussing this plan. He was reluctant at first, but eventually agreed. They had been planning this financial scheme for months, while I was picking out wedding venues and imagining our future together. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer to understand my options. I learned that in our state I needed to protect myself immediately. The lawyer advised me to formally break our engagement in writing and document everything related to Allison's confession and scheme. When Allison returned that evening to collect her belongings, I was ready. I had set up my phone to legally record our conversation. Single-party consent was all that was needed in our state. I calmly confronted her with what I had discovered in her diary. I know about the plan, Allison. The pregnancy, the marriage, the divorce, the child support, and alimony. All of it. Her face transformed from confusion to shock to rage in seconds. You had no right to read my private thoughts. Private thoughts, I laughed, without humor. You documented a financial fraud scheme and discussed it extensively with your lover. That is beyond private thoughts. That is criminal. She switched tactics immediately, tears filling her eyes. Boyd, you do not understand. Jake pressured me. I never would have gone through with it. I love you too much. I played a recording of her voice from the previous night. It is Jake's. I am about 2 months along. Your lies stop now, I said. I have already contacted a lawyer. The engagement is officially over. I expect you to return the ring, which legally remains my property since you breached the promise of marriage. Her facade crumbled completely then. The tears vanished, replaced by cold fury. You think you are so smart. You have no idea what I am capable of. Actually, after reading your diary, I have a pretty good idea. I had already packed most of her belongings into boxes. I stood firm as she gathered her things, occasionally throwing items or muttering threats under her breath. As she walked out the door, she turned back with a look that sent chills down my spine. Your family loves me more than they love you, Boyd. Remember that. You will regret this. I changed the locks that same day. True to her threat, Allison launched her campaign of destruction immediately. Within hours, my phone was flooded with angry messages from my parents and siblings. Somehow she had convinced them that I had been cheating on her with multiple women, that she had discovered my infidelity and confronted me, and that I had cruelly thrown her out when she was at her most vulnerable. She had fabricated evidence, doctored screenshots of conversations that never happened, photos of me with female colleagues at work, events that she cropped and presented as proof of intimate relationships. She told my family I had become controlling and verbally abusive, that she had been afraid to leave me until she found definitive proof of my betrayal. The most devastating part was how quickly and completely my family believed her. Not one of them called to hear my side of the story. The family group chat I had been part of for years suddenly went silent for me. They had created a new one without me. My sister Hannah, who had been my best friend since childhood, sent me a single message. I cannot believe you would do this to Allison. Do not contact any of us until you get help. 3 days after Allison left, my father showed up unannounced at my apartment. I felt a momentary relief. Finally, someone from my family was coming to hear my side. That hope died the moment I saw his face contorted with rage I had never seen directed at me before. How could you? He shouted, pushing past me into the living room. Your mother can barely get out of bed. Allison showed us everything. Dad, whatever she showed you was fake. Stop lying, he roared. We saw the messages, the pictures. You have been cheating on that poor girl for months. And then to throw her out like garbage when she confronted you. That is not what happened. I tried to explain, reaching for my phone. I have proof that I never finished that sentence. My father, a man who had never so much as raised his voice to me throughout my childhood, struck me across the face with enough force to send me stumbling backward into the coffee table. I crashed to the floor, tasting blood, where my lip had split against my teeth. "You are no son of mine," he said, his voice eerily calm now. "Your mother and I raised you better than this. Until you admit what you have done and make things right with Allison, you are not welcome in our home or our lives." I looked up from the floor to see my mother and my sister Hannah standing in the doorway, having arrived with my father. Neither made a move to help me as I struggled to my feet. My mother was crying silently, and Hannah just looked at me with disgust. "Mom, please," I said. "Let me explain what really happened." She turned away, unable to even look at me. "Your father has said all that needs to be said." They left without another word. By the time I had cleaned the blood from my face and checked that none of my teeth were loose, I discovered that every member of my family had blocked my number and removed me from all social media. In the span of 4 days, I had lost my fiancée, my family, and the future I had spent years building. I was completely alone. The next 2 weeks were the darkest of my life. The physical pain from my father's assault was nothing compared to the emotional devastation. I could not eat, could not sleep. I would stare at the ceiling all night, replaying every moment, with Allison wondering if there had been signs I had missed, wondering if there was anything I could have done differently. I took time off work, unable to focus on spreadsheets and client meetings while my personal life was in shambles. My boss was understanding at first, but after a week of my absence, the concerned emails turned to stern warnings. I was at risk of losing the only thing I had left my career. Friends started to take sides. Most of Allison's friends obviously sided with her. But I was shocked when some of my own friends began distancing themselves. She had been busy contacting anyone who knew us, spreading her version of events. Those who did reach out to me often seemed to be fishing for gossip rather than offering support. The financial strain added another layer to my misery. We had put down non-refundable deposits on a venue caterer, photographer, and a dozen other wedding services. I had spent thousands on the engagement ring which Allison had not returned, despite my lawyer's formal request. My savings, which I had been building meticulously for years, were decimated. Some mornings I would pack a suitcase, convinced that leaving town was my only option. Start fresh somewhere else somewhere without the constant reminders of betrayal. But something always stopped me. A stubborn voice in the back of my mind that refused to be driven away from the life I had built by someone else's lies. The turning point came 3 weeks after my world collapsed. Thomas, my oldest friend from high school, showed up at my apartment, unannounced. Unlike everyone else, he had not taken sides or demanded explanations. He simply said, "You look like hell, man," and ordered pizza. That night, sitting on my couch with the first real food I had eaten in days, I finally told someone the whole truth. I showed him the screenshots I had taken of Allison's messages with Jake, the photos of her diary entries, detailing her scheme, the recordings of our final conversations. Thomas listened without interruption, his expression darkening as the full picture emerged. When I finished, he said something that changed everything. "Boyd, you are fighting for your reputation, like it is a popularity contest. This is not about who can spread the most convincing story. This is about hard evidence and legal protection." He was right. I had been so overwhelmed by the emotional tornado that I had not approached this strategically. Thomas helped me develop a plan. First, we would gather irrefutable evidence of Allison's affair and scheme. Second, we would secure legal protection against any further defamation. Finally, we would present the truth to my family in a way they could not ignore or dismiss. I started seeing a therapist twice a week, someone recommended by Thomas's wife who specialized in betrayal trauma. Dr. Keller helped me work through the rage and heartbreak, giving me techniques to manage the anxiety attacks that had become a regular occurrence. More importantly, she helped me understand that I was not responsible for Allison's actions or my family's reaction. Your only job right now, she told me, is to honor your own truth and rebuild your life with people who deserve your trust. With my emotional health slowly improving, I turned my focus to gathering evidence. I hired a private investigator recommended by my lawyer. Within a week, he had documented Allison's ongoing relationship with Jake, photos of them together, at his apartment, at restaurants shopping for baby items. He also discovered that Allison had a history of similar behavior in previous relationships, something that would have been useful to know 3 years ago. I recovered deleted cloud backups of our shared computer, finding more conversations between Allison and Jake that she thought were permanently erased. There were messages where she calculated exactly how much she could legally extract from me in child support based on my salary and bonuses. There were discussions about how they would use the money to buy a house together once the divorce was finalized. I found witnesses, waiters at restaurants, who had seen them together while I was at work. The concierge at a hotel they frequented, even one of her friends, who had grown uncomfortable with the deception and was willing to provide a written statement. The most crucial step came when my investigator arranged a meeting with Jake himself. With my lawyer's guidance, we approached him with the evidence we had gathered and a simple proposition: tell the truth now voluntarily, or face potential legal consequences for his participation in the fraud scheme. Jake, it turned out, had already begun to regret his role in the plan. When faced with possible legal action, he crumbled immediately. He provided a recorded statement detailing how Allison had orchestrated everything, how she had convinced him to participate by promising they would be together with his child and my money. He admitted that Allison had planned to wait until after our marriage to prevent any questions about the baby's paternity, maximizing the financial benefits she could claim. With this comprehensive evidence in hand, my lawyer sent Allison a cease and desist letter regarding her defamatory statements. The letter included a sample of the evidence we had gathered and made it clear that if she continued spreading lies about me, we would pursue legal action. The final step was the hardest: confronting my family with the truth. I prepared a detailed presentation of everything I had discovered, organizing the evidence chronologically and verifying each piece with my lawyer to ensure it was legally obtained and incontrovertible. The path back to my family began in an unexpected way. 5 weeks after my father's assault, I received a text from my youngest sister, Amanda, asking if we could meet for coffee. She had always been the peacemaker in the family, often staying quiet during conflicts. I was wary, but agreed to see her. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between our homes. Amanda looked nervous, fidgeting with her cup as she struggled to begin the conversation. Something about Allison's story does not add up, she finally said. The timeline she gave us about discovering your alleged affairs contradicts things she told me earlier. And some of those messages she showed us, they do not sound like you at all. I felt a flicker of hope for the first time in weeks. I have been trying to tell you all that she fabricated everything I said. Would you be willing to see the evidence I have gathered? Amanda nodded, and I showed her the organized file on my tablet. The original messages between Allison and Jake, the diary entries, the private investigator's photos, and Jake's recorded confession. As she went through it, all her eyes widened, and her hand covered her mouth in shock. "Oh my God, Boyd," she whispered. "What we did to you. What Dad did. I am so sorry." Amanda became my advocate within the family. She took copies of all the evidence and began the difficult task of convincing our parents and siblings to look at it with an open mind. She faced resistance. At first, my father was particularly stubborn, unwilling to admit he had made such a catastrophic error in judgment. But Amanda was persistent, pointing out inconsistencies in Allison's story that they had overlooked in their rush to judgment. My brother Tyler was the next to come around. He reviewed the evidence carefully, his analytical mind picking apart Allison's lies point by point. He called me late one night, his voice rough with emotion. "I should have known better," he said. "I should have at least heard you out." One by one, family members began to reach out. My sister Hannah, who had been Allison's closest ally among them, was devastated when she realized how thoroughly she had been manipulated. She showed up at my apartment in tears, begging for forgiveness. The final holdouts were my parents. My mother called first, her voice small and hesitant on the phone. "Your father is still processing everything," she said. "But I need to see you, Boyd. I need to apologize in person." We met for lunch the following day. She looked older somehow, the weight of her guilt aging her visibly. She reached across the table and took my hands in hers. "I failed you as a mother," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I should have trusted my son over someone I had only known for 3 years. There is no excuse. You were manipulated by someone who is very good at it," I said, surprised by my own capacity for understanding. My therapist had helped me see that while my anger was justified, holding on to it would only continue to harm me. My father was the last to acknowledge the truth. 2 months after he had struck me and disowned me, he asked to meet. We sat in the same restaurant where we had celebrated my college graduation years earlier. He looked smaller, somehow diminished by the weight of his actions. "I have no right to ask for your forgiveness," he said, his voice unsteady. "What I did, striking my own son. There is no excuse. I can only say that I was blinded by what I thought was righteous anger. I failed you in the worst possible way. I did not rush to absolve him. The physical assault had left a deeper wound than the initial betrayal. I need time," I told him. "Honestly, I want to rebuild our relationship, but it will take work from both of us." He nodded, accepting this boundary. "Whatever it takes, however long it takes. Your mother and I would like to start by inviting you to Sunday dinner. The whole family will be there, but only if you are ready." I declined that first invitation. I needed more time to process everything, to establish new boundaries that would protect me going forward. My therapist helped me understand that forgiveness and reconciliation are separate processes. I could forgive them for my own healing, without immediately returning to the same relationship dynamics. The family respected this boundary, continuing to reach out with small gestures rather than grand apologies or demands. My mother would drop off containers of home-cooked meals. Tyler invited me to watch football games like we used to. Hannah sent thoughtful texts, checking in without pressuring me to respond. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into work, earning a promotion that had been in the pipeline before everything fell apart. I moved to a new apartment in a different neighborhood somewhere, without memories of Allison around every corner. I reconnected with friends who had stood by me and made new ones through a hiking group. Thomas convinced me to join. The legal situation with Allison resolved itself when she and Jake moved to another state. My cease and desist letter had been effective. She stopped spreading lies about me, perhaps realizing that the evidence I had gathered could cause serious problems for her if she continued. According to mutual acquaintances, they were trying to make their relationship work for the sake of their child. 6 months after that terrible night, when my father struck me, I finally accepted an invitation to Sunday dinner with my family. It was awkward at first, with everyone trying too hard, not to mention Allison or what had happened. But as the evening progressed, something like normalcy began to emerge. We were not the same family we had been before, perhaps we never would be, but we were finding a new way to connect. My relationship with my father remained the most complicated. We started meeting one-on-one for breakfast every few weeks, slowly rebuilding trust through honest conversations. He attended therapy himself, working to understand the anger that had led him to violence. It was a long road, but each conversation brought us closer to a new understanding. Today, a year after Allison's betrayal, I am in a different place entirely. The pain has not disappeared completely. I still have moments of anger and hurt when memories surface unexpectedly, but they no longer define me. I have built a life I am proud of, with people who have proven their loyalty and love. The most important lesson I learned through all of this was about intuition. Those small feelings of unease I had ignored for months were trying to tell me something important. Now I listen to that inner voice. I pay attention when something feels wrong. I trust myself enough to ask difficult questions and face uncomfortable truths. I have also learned about conditional versus unconditional love. True love, whether from family, friends, or partners, should not vanish at the first sign of trouble. It should not require perfection or compliance. Real love means at least giving someone the chance to explain themselves before passing judgment. My family and I have established healthier boundaries. I have forgiven them, but I have not forgotten. Our relationship now includes more honesty, more direct communication, and more respect for each other as individuals. In some ways, we are closer now than we were before having weathered a storm that could have permanently destroyed us. As for romantic relationships, I have recently started dating again. I am proceeding cautiously, but not fearfully. The experience with Allison taught me what red flags to watch for, but it did not convince me that all relationships are doomed to fail. I am more careful now, but still open to the possibility of love. If you have ever experienced betrayal by those closest to you, know that healing is possible. Not easy, not quick, but possible. The journey from victim to survivor to thriver requires patience and support. But you can rebuild your life into something beautiful and authentic. Have you ever had to rebuild trust with family after a major conflict? How did you find the balance between forgiveness and self-protection? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences and lessons learned the hard way. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the hardest challenges lead to the most important growth.